My name is Nick Jerns. I am the proud principal of Jefferson Elementary here in Faribault Public Schools. Sorry for the hang up there. We had a couple of things going on, and I believe Scott's currently with some kiddos right now, so hopefully he can hop on in a little bit. But if not, I can run us through this whole presentation on highlighting what we do for TFI item 1.4. Um, just a little background. When I came here 4 years ago, um, Scott also came to Jefferson from another building in the district. He had been an EBD teacher for about 15 years, and then he moved into Dean of Students role. So him and I joined Jefferson at the same time 4 years ago. And we're definitely in a much different place today than we were 4 years ago. We've made a ton of growth, but we're also always looking for ways to improve. And one of the things that you'll see here is we have started, we're about 80% through taking the TFI 3.0 as a PBIS team. And so we've already done this item. And so you'll see that we definitely have some opportunity for growth um, in this area as well. So just a little background on our school. Um, we previously were a K through 5 school. The last year our district chose to reorganize, and so we are now a grades 1 through 5 school, and our kindergarten is housed with pre-K in another building. We're at about 430, 440 students. Um, I mentioned that Scott and I came here 4 years ago. Jefferson had been PBIS trained in cohort number 12 here in Minnesota. That would have been before our time. And then when we got here, we noticed that we were really strong in the celebrations area, but we needed a lot of work in the instruction area. And so we kind of pitched to the PBIS team, why don't we try to get into cohort training and get retrained? And so we are proud graduates of cohort 19. We graduated from that training last spring. Little breakdown on our building. Faribault is a very diverse community, and our building is the most diverse. You can see there that we're just under 40% Black or African American. That's primarily Somali, about 30% Hispanic, and the remainder is white or two or more races. We have a high EL population, a high special education population, and a high free and reduced population, which because of those demographics, it actually allows us, it gives us a lot of, Faribault has a lot of grant money, but then that grant money is also tied into checklists. And so sometimes we're a little bit restricted in some of the things we can do with that, but we get creative and we make it work. So, all right, we're going to dig specifically into our TFI item that we're sharing here, 1.4, school-wide expectations taught. I mentioned that our PBIS team started taking the 3.0 about 3 weeks ago. We've had 2 sessions of, talking through the items and voting, and we got one more session to finish up the last few, but we scored ourselves at a 3 for this year. And so I highlighted where we scored ourselves. And then the next slide I'm going to show is actually how we do our action planning. So I'm going to give you a little verbal preview before we get into it. The way we do our action plan is we have a document where we list every single TFI item and then our score, and then the actual verbiage for the TFI item, we highlight it. The areas that we are fully implementing, we highlight in green. The areas that we are working on but need to improve, we highlight in yellow. And the areas that we don't implement at all and that we really need to focus on, we highlight in red. So we kind of use those stoplight colors to help us prioritize in our TFIs. So you'll see here, our old TFI, the 2.1, the language, we were all green. So this would have been the 2.1. This would have been from the 24-25 school year. In the fall, we were at a 1. So this highlighting of green would have looked a little bit different in the fall. And then as we knocked some of the items out that we needed to work on, our spring score was a 2. Then we highlighted that in green to show that we were fully implementing that. Down below that, you'll see the language from the 3.0. So we've got highlighted in there in green the portion that we are fully implementing, and then the portion that we're not sure about because that's new language in the TFI, and so we highlight that in yellow. We're confident that we have a lot of students and staff that could be able to do those things, but until we have our external walkthrough done this spring, we're not going to know for that on that. So that's what we currently have highlighted um, for that item. Now we're going to go into exactly how do we teach some of these things. And so we kind of broke it down into some different categories. First of all, our acronym is SOAR. And you'll see on the next slide, S stands for safe, O is on task, A is accountable, and R is respectful. And we are Falcons, and so that works nicely for us. A couple of the building-wide strategies that we have is we have a behavior matrix. And so our behavior matrix breaks down those SOAR traits in each of our different settings or environments that we might be in. And so, you can see there it starts with classroom, and then you'll see hallway and bathroom, and we'll get into this more, but you'll see these are hyperlinked. So anything that's hyperlinked in blue, there's a lesson plan and a video that goes with this, and we'll talk more about that later. So this is a document that we kind of use as a guiding document for what our SOAR traits look like and indicators of those things in these different settings. Okay. And over the years that we've been here, we've added some different things. So I know like we added dismissal and arrival 2 years ago. We have a group of students called patrols. That one's not quite done yet. We're working on that one. We did not have specialists 2 years ago, so we added in our specialists to our matrix. We also have a behavior flow chart. When Scott and I started 4 years ago, there was a flow chart. However, it was tucked away in a handbook, and it was not an active document that was being implemented. And so, in an effort to make sure that we are consistent and predictable in our implementation of how we appropriately respond to or some of our proactive strategies, as well as how we appropriately respond when undesirable behaviors occur. We have our behavior flow chart. We've kind of moved and tweaked things a little bit over the years, but we kind of have it broken down into our minors are on our left, our majors are on our right, and then we kind of have the specific directions that our staff follow or the process that they follow when these things occur. And then on our second plate or page, we have, again, a lot of those proactive strategies, how to correct errors. And so this is a document that we kind of like in PBIS, we talk about the importance of having consistent expectations as you redirect to the expectation versus redirect to the person. Scott and I use this to redirect our staff to this is the expectation for how we manage these undesirable behaviors versus redirecting to this is what the dean wants or this is what the principal wants. So moving on, some more building-wide instruction. I mentioned those lessons. So we do have our PBIS team broken into a lesson planning team and a celebrations team. And so there's one meeting a month where we meet as a big team. And then there's one meeting a month that's just the lesson planning team. And there's another meeting a month that's just the celebrations team. The lesson planning team is the team that creates those lessons. And so that behavior matrix that had those hyperlinks in it, those would be our tier 1 lessons. And we are very intentional about making sure that those lessons are on our staff calendars so that all classrooms are teaching them during their morning meeting second step time on the same day. And then there's a short quiz that we have the teachers kind of walk the students through, and they take a class quiz together, and that's for us to make sure we're checking our fidelity. Here's an example of those tier 1 lesson plans. So in that behavior matrix, we had the school bus, we had the playground, the hallway. So the hyperlinks would have taken them specifically to those lessons. This is just another document that has those lessons. One additional component we added in this year for the advanced tiers is we have what we call our Student Success PLC team. So there's a group of us that like myself and Scott, our social workers, our school psych, our community school coordinator, we meet twice a month as well, and we look at specific tier two data. And so we found there were a couple of specific behaviors that we needed to go back and reteach and coach and provide some more specific instruction for some of those students on. And so those are a couple of lessons that we created for those tier two needs. Oops. And there's that advanced tier support. Um, and just some note, I just kind of mentioned that. So um, we make sure that we make data-driven decisions. We often know that our student behaviors can be oftentimes take place in public areas, and that can kind of become the narrative of the building if we're not careful. And so one of the things that we do is Scott creates a monthly presentation that gets shared out with staff at our monthly staff meeting, and it basically breaks down, what percentage of our students would fall under tier one for this month, what would fall under tier two, and what would fall under tier three. And then we make sure we're communicating that out. In most months, it's 88% or 92% of our students had zero behavior referrals for the month of March. And so we try to use that data to tell our story versus those public behaviors that are we can't avoid those things. We also keep a running total um, for the year of where we fall on our MTSS triangle. And so um, when we created this presentation, we were at about 83.8% of our students were falling in that tier one, which would be 0 or 1 referrals, 11.5% in that tier two, and 5% in that tier three. And I spend a lot of time instructing our staff on what does that MTSS triangle actually mean and what is the story behind it and the research and the evidence, so that when we look at these numbers, we're like, well, yeah, we're humming along nicely. There's no need to be alarmed. We also look at that image on the right. We've got our average referrals per month. And again, being transparent with that data, although it doesn't appease everyone, staff definitely appreciate seeing that. All right, so some of the suggestions that we came up with, if you're just getting started with this, is make sure you got a great team and utilize your team. I mentioned we broke into a few years ago, actually I've been here 4 years. My second year here, we've decided to break into the two-team model. And we really tap into those staff on that team that are passionate about either celebrations or lesson planning to do the lion's share of the work. We've got a really big team. I think we got 16, 17 people on our team, and we're well represented from the different positions they hold. We've through our cohort training, we got some new ideas on how to organize our agendas. So make sure that you implement those things. Make sure you got an admin that's an active member. I know when I started here, well, previous to my time, they did not have a dean of students, and I'm not sure how they made that work with all the meetings that principals go to, but having a dean frees me up for a few things, and so I'm able to be an active participant on the team. Make sure you get all the training you can. Again, take little, and they teach you this in cohort training, but take little bits and pieces that fit into what you're already doing and get some small wins before you really start expanding. Leverage your leaders. Like, this has to come from within the team. And so one of the ways that I leverage leaders is whether it's the PBIS team or maybe it's my site leadership team or some other team, if there's a big decision that needs to be made or if there's information that needs to be shared, I like to filter that out in small pieces to smaller teams first. And so definitely leverage the leaders that you have on your teams. We talked about the data, and then again, we're presenting on TFI 1.4. We take the TFI now that we're done with cohort training. We take it every fall and every spring. We have an external walkthrough done every spring, and then we also give the SAS annually. And so getting that data, using that data to help with your planning is a huge thing. So um, the getting better, these are just some things that we've done the last, 2 or 3 years since getting into cohort training again. Again, we've updated that agenda. We're dabbling in the advanced tiers a little bit this year with that student success PLC team, continuing to build and refine those systems that you're using. So like I consider the behavior flowchart as a process or a system for how we work through undesirable behaviors. And that has had little tweaks and changes over the years. Making sure that we get community involvement. Um, Scott could speak more to that because him and the other deans have gotten out into the community and done some work and getting some community buy-in and getting some um, financial support from them. Um, we are still working on getting continuity between our schools. We have 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And everybody either has been or is going through cohort training. And so making sure that we have alignment across all buildings so that it's consistent for our students and our families and any staff that may move between buildings. That's something we're continuing to get better at. Um, we have we have a group of PBIS student leaders that meet with Scott every month for lunch. Getting parent involvement outside of staff members has been a little bit of a challenge, so we're trying to get better at that. And we work hard with our social workers and our EL team and our cultural liaisons to make sure that we are getting trauma informed and culturally responsive because it's all interwoven. So with that, I'd be happy to field any questions or comments that anybody would have or any advice.